Hi everyone. I invite those of you in the theatre with us to resume your seats and welcome back our online audience. Our next guest is a thought leader and change maker who is passionate about the ways in which we can reform education systems across the world, the future of schooling and innovation in teaching and learning. Pasi Sahlberg is a Finnish educator, teacher and author who has worked as a school teacher, teacher-educator, academic and policymaker in Finland. He has advised schools and education system leaders around the world. Pasi is a member of the Board of Directors of the International Congress for School Effectiveness and Improvement and a member of the Advisory Board to the Centre for International Education Benchmarking in the USA. Pasi has published many books in education, including Finnish Lessons 2.0, What Can the World Learn from Educational Change in Finland? Finnish Ed Leadership, 4 Big, Inexpensive Ideas to Transform Education, and Let the Children Play, How More Play Will Save Our Schools and Help Children Thrive, which I'm sure is very familiar to many of you here with us today. Pasi is currently Professor of Education Leadership at the University of Melbourne, Australia. Today, Pasi is joined by 2 students and young people, Elmi Slater and Otto Wilkinson-Powery, who will also share their thoughts and ideas about the future of education. Elmi Slater is a Year 12 student at Dixon College, where she's studying a wonderful mix of subjects. Some of those include engaging with the uncomfortable, sociology, visual art, contemporary music, and Indigenous culture and languages. Elmi works part-time at Craft and Design Canberra. She is frequently consuming and creating art. Elmi is interested in exploring anthropology and curatorship in her tertiary studies, and she is a passionate advocate for integrating the arts into learning and representing knowledge. Otto is a newly appointed member of the National Gallery's Youth Council. He recently graduated from Canberra College, having been part of the innovative Big Picture Academy from grades 9 to 12. The Big Picture education program provides a unique and immersive learning experience, fostering a holistic approach to education by connecting students with real-world experiences. During the 4 years in the Big Picture Academy, Otto actively participated in diverse projects and another range of wonderful subjects, including perfumery, mid-century modern design, and most recently art education. This rich and varied experience has fueled Otto's passion for exploring the intersections for creativity and education. Thank you so much for being with us, Elmi and Otto, and I invite Pasi to take the stage. Thank you, Pasi.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. How are you going? It's a wonderful conference. Thank you so much for having me here, inviting me to this beautiful building. And as you heard, I'm not here by myself. Elmi and Otto will join the conversation in a moment. I was here this morning listening to some of the teacher voice presentation, wonderful stories from our schools. I think teacher voice is important, right? But so is a student voice, and that's why I thought when I accepted this opportunity to talk, I said, I only come here if you allow me to take 1 or 2 of the young people with me. So Elmi and Otto will do that. Can I propose that you stay there for a while, and I invite you to the conversation over there. So this is going to be a little bit different thing now, because we're going to look at, first of all, you need to know that I'm not an arts or visual arts teacher at all. I love music and arts and drama and theatre and all those things, but I used to teach completely different things in a school, and I still do. So we're going to look at the education as a kind of a big picture thing. So the question here is that what do we need to do in this country and beyond to have more appreciation and respect and room for all these beautiful ideas and intentions that you guys have. Music education is the other one that is missing. I would love to see music as part of this same conversation here, but that's the kind of a thing. So I'm going to have 2 parts in this this next hour that we have. One is the look a little bit about what education looks like globally, like big picture thing, a little bit about this country as well. And then the second half will be more about what do we need to do? How can we move from here to the future that will be more friendly and open to many of those things that we have heard here in this conference earlier and that you will be discussing later today and tomorrow. Does this sound like a plan for you? So if you want me to talk about something else, just time is now to tell me that, because I'm very flexible to do these things. So the title of this hour is Repositioning Our Schools, and we have heard a lot about these similar things during the pandemic, about the building back better and different and reimagining, reinventing, all sorts of things. But this repositioning, I think, is a good title for this. And my background is in school teaching, so that was my first job, and I learned a number of useful things for life while being a teacher. One of them is that if you want to make sure that your students, or your audience in this case, will pay close attention to what you're going to say, give them a little quiz in the beginning. And I know that here in Australia, you love testing. You test your kids to the death sometimes. So I thought that although I've been living here with my family now over 5 years, I know that not all of you think like this, but I think having a little quiz never does harm to any of this. I'm going to do this in a way, this is kind of a collective quiz. So I'm inviting you to find a new friend or somebody who's sitting next to you over there, and you can answer these 3 simple questions collectively. And I'm going to promise you one thing, that if you pay close attention to what we say, what we have to, what we're talking about here today, you're going to find right answers to these 3 questions easily. Okay? Are you with me? Yes, you are. Okay. So the first one is, and it's, you just need to tick the box, like, this is a typical way of testing whether kids are learning anything in a school. It's just tick the box, and your options are very limited. There are 2 options, yes and no. So the first question here is that quality and equity of school education around the world has improved during the 21st century, during the last 20 years. Now, I'm only going to give you like a 20 seconds. Turn to somebody who's sitting next to you and try to come into kind of a consensus of what your answer would be, and then tick the box in your mind. Thank you so much. Just like in any test in the school, time is limited and time is short, and even if you're not sure what to do, just tick the box now in your mind, and if you have a consensus, you agreed with your neighbor, that's good. Next question is this one. Australia has more compulsory instruction time during primary and lower secondary schooling than other OECD countries. If you think this is true, tick the box yes. If you think that this is not true, tick the box no. Just have a chat with the neighbor. Okay, and then the third one. And this is more about what you do. Arts and music currently hold a similar status in our schools as literacy and numeracy. Don't laugh, life is full of surprises, so you never know what's up there. No need to discuss this, no? Okay, but tick the box anyway, because every test must have a kind of a question that most people get it right. All right, so before we continue, on behalf of both Otto and Elmi, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land where we meet today, and pay our respects to elders past, present, and certainly also the next generation of leaders and elders that we will have in this country. So let me oops, sorry about this. Let me go to this part 1. So this, I'll take about probably 12 minutes or so, just to give you a kind of a big picture of where we are right now. You're going to get the answer to one or two of the questions, the quiz questions, if you stay awake and pay a little bit attention to this. So the state of school education refers here to globally. So we're really looking at the big picture, a little bit about this country as well, because I do believe that we all need to know this. Whatever you're asking for the future or for your own subjects or your own school, we need to understand where we are. Otherwise, these questions may not be completely relevant. So this is the reform movement that we have seen until now. This, of course, is a very rough estimate about the kind of a paradigm that we have seen around the world in different countries, how the policymakers and education systems have been driving the education outcomes and teaching and learning in the schools. There are many more kind of labels within this movement. I just mentioned you 3 here just to keep this simple. The first one is the marketization of education. This has happened everywhere around the world. This means that somehow the school choice, the parental choice of their children's education has been a driving force in the policy. Certainly here in Australia, that many people say that as soon as parents have more choice regarding where their kids go to school, the quality of education will somehow improve. Because it's like in a marketplace, if you have one vendor selling apples, you probably pay more and get the lower quality of fruit. But as soon as you have several providers, all of a sudden the price goes down and quality goes up. So this has been a very common thing. During the last 20, 30 years, we have seen an increasing focus on reading, literacy, and mathematics, and a little bit of science in all the school systems around the world. And of course, the international comparisons, like the OECD's PISA study that some of you probably know, has only intensified this thing, that we are comparing education systems now in terms of their performance, the quality or equity in education regarding these 2 or 3 subjects. So this has been a kind of a big part of this movement. And then the third one is the what I call test-based accountability. That actually includes a couple of things. One is the increasing use of standardized assessments to decide what the kids do in a school or how the school systems perform, and then stronger accountability for often individual teachers or principals or schools to make sure that the results and outcomes are there. So as I said, that there are some other things here. This is just a kind of a simple example. So if this is the case, then of course we need to ask 3 questions. One is that what have been the outcomes during this time when we have been relying on these and other principles of running our education systems? How the efficiency of the systems have developed. In other words, are we getting more out of the systems with the same investments or less? And then the third one is this equity thing. In other words, that how the education systems are serving different types of students. Does this make sense? Okay. So now I can show you some of the answers to these questions, so that we can decide whether this movement has been a kind of a right-headed in a sense that it has been able to keep the promise that we have heard in this country and in most other countries as well. So this is a very rough kind of a thing that you're going to see here. The good thing is that we have so much data and evidence right now that we can paint these pictures of progress of education systems from the beginning of the year 2000. So what you see here in this vertical line is the kind of a strength of some of these trends that you're going to see. And obviously all these trends indicate those 3 questions that you saw before. So if you pay attention to this graph now you're going to see 2 of these trends during the last 20, 25 years. The first one of them is the students' outcomes as they are measured in these international assessments, mostly literacy and numeracy. And you can see that overall there has been decline. So that things are not going any better than they were 25 years ago. Actually, in many ways, things are going downhill. Not to mention the children's health and well-being that we all know have been in a kind of a steady decline over the last, particularly over the last 10, 15 years for certain reasons. But then we have an interesting thing here, the third trend here that you can see, and this is about the money, the efficiency, how much does it cost to educate the child in today's education systems. This, by the way, this is very close to what situation here in Australia has been, but we are still looking at the kind of a global thing. So we are spending more money, but we are getting less out of that. And that, of course, raises a question of what's going on. And for me, this indicates that we have to be very careful in thinking that just by continuing school education as we have done so far would make a big difference in outcomes, because it probably won't. But let's take some more data here that we can answer this question: what's the state of education? So this one is basically coming from the similar international data set starting from year 2000. What you're going to see here is the achievement gap, the kind of a learning gap between the most affluent quarter of our kids in international global systems of education. So this is not Australia, this is the world, or the wealthy part of the world, and the lowest quarter, the most disadvantaged students. So 25 years ago, we realized that there was about 3-year learning gap at the age of 15 in children's performance in reading, mathematics, and science. It's a massive gap, right? So we have known this for more than 20 years. What do you think has happened to that gap as we have traveled from year 2000 to present time? Has it gone up? Has it come down? Or remained the same? It's pretty much remained unchanged. Okay? So you will see that today, this is the latest data that we have available, the situation is still the same. So we still have about 3 years learning gap at the age of 15 of the most affluent and the poorest children in the school systems around the world. By the way, this is a very accurate picture of Australia as well. So we are looking at the same thing. If I may break your heart a little bit further, let's take a look at this, probably the most painful part of our national situation here. So this is what we saw 24 years ago in the first OECD study when we were looking at the Indigenous students and non-Indigenous students' performance. The red bar here shows you the proportion of those students at the age of 15 who didn't meet the proficiency level in reading, literacy, and the green one is the proportion of students who were high-performing students, okay? Now, I'm going to show you what has happened during the last 22 years or so here in Australia in this particular data. And you will see that today, according to this evidence that we have here, 57% of our Indigenous students are not proficient in reading literacy in these international studies. And the same trend has been there with the other kids, but not to the same magnitude. Again, I don't know how you make sense out of this, but for me this is a very difficult thing to explain, that we live in one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and we have kind of tolerated this similar type of trend over the last 20-25 years. A little bit more data from Australia, just to make sure that nobody in the room would say that everything is fine. We just need to continue as we have done so far. So because here in Australia, as you know, that we are in a unique situation that we have this systematic data through NAPLAN, whatever you think about NAPLAN, but this is the statistics that we can have here from year 3, 5, 7, and 9. Now, what this allows us to do is an interesting kind of an experiment that we can take two typical students in this country on average. This is not any particular school. Those students who are living in a higher socioeconomic family, who, in other words, they live with the wealthier parents. And then the red one is the child who lives in a poorer family. At the third year, year 3, their performance difference in reading literacy is about 2 years. Okay, so they have been in school for 2 years, and there's about 2 years gap in terms of what they can do in reading. What do you think will happen when they go to school 6 years further? The same kids. Does the gap go narrower? Does it remain the same? Or get wider? So you know this already. What are you doing here? Look at this. So this is what the schooling here in Australia does to different children. Rather than making life more equal for these kids, it's making it more unequal. Okay, and if there's anybody here who thinks that this doesn't apply to all the kids, it's the same thing with our indigenous students and non-indigenous students that you saw earlier there. This gap is just getting wider. So why is this? I'm going to invite Elmi and Otto in a moment to have a chat. And now if you go back to the quiz earlier, here's the answer to this question, one of these questions. Now, some people say that what we need to do in this country is to just add a little bit more literacy and numeracy to the already fully booked school schedules. But I often saw people take a look at this. Australia, we have the highest number of compulsory instruction time in our primary and lower secondary schools for our kids than any other country in the OECD. By far, and not just a little bit, but by far. So school days are already full of stuff. So now you may want to say that there should be more visual arts or music or drama or those things, and you may be right. And this is exactly what I want you to, kind of a provocation that I want you to think about. That rather than insist that we continue doing the same things, but more and more often than before, maybe we should be doing things differently. And with this one, can I ask you, invite you, Elmi and Otto, to join me? We're going to have a little chat about this before we get into what needs to be done. And I had to walk here because the table couldn't be there for some reason. Okay. Sorry. Welcome. How are you?
I'm good. We're good.
Good. So very briefly, how do you explain this? What you see here in Australia, in the world? Why do you think we are moving in that direction?
I think that school for a lot of students is a place where we go to school instead of a place where we go to enjoy ourselves and be engaged with what we're doing. I know this from first-hand experience from the program that I've joined. Ever since I've been able to work on passion-based learning on stuff that I'm actually interested in, my grades have gone up, and like my mental health has been better, my behaviour, all that type of stuff.
So what was there in this new school that made you feel that way?
Yeah, so in the new school, it's called the Big Picture program, and it's based off of passion-based learning. So you get to pick a topic, and then you get to wrap around things like communication skills, literacy skills, numeracy skills, all that type of stuff. But the idea is that you're actually engaged with what you're doing. So I've engaged in projects like perfumery and art and mid-century modern design, all that type of stuff, all this stuff that interests me. But I've been able to work on my literacy and numeracy skills, communication skills through that.
Thanks, Elmi. How do you explain this to people here?
So like you illustrated before, there's such a heavy emphasis on literacy and numeracy. I feel like so many other areas are heavily neglected, and same with all the standardized testing and testing being a common mode of assessment, which doesn't mix with all kids, and neither does the current school system that I feel like has, it's just the same Western school system that we've been not functioning under for so long. And I don't think I have properly enjoyed the content or the style of learning until I got to go to college and had a bit more choice and say in what I wanted to look into. And in particular, the Indigenous Culture and Languages course, that's what really got me thinking about how we do education and how we do school, with more learning on country and out of classroom, making me think about space being really important to me, different modes of expressing knowledge and teaching, like as both ways. So yeah.
So from your point of view, one of the things that we could have seen here as well is Otto, you mentioned the engagement, the student engagement in schooling. There's a lot of evidence about what we call a sense of belonging to school. How important do you think this is, just explaining some of these very inconvenient trends that we see, that that. Do you think, Otto, that this fact that you mentioned that there are young people who are not engaged truly in school, or they don't feel that they belong to school, could somehow explain those things here in Australia or beyond?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's really important, like engagement in schools, obviously. If you're going somewhere where you don't want to be, and you're bored, you're not really going to learn much from that. But yeah.
So Elmi, you mentioned you kind of, if I heard correctly, you criticized a little bit the literacy and numeracy and standardized testing. But what would you say somebody, and I know that this audience is probably not a good sample of those people, but there might be somebody who would say, yeah, okay, but everybody has to learn how to read and how to count and do these things, and when you've learned those things well, then you can think about arts and many other things. But how would you speak about that to those people who just want to push more and more of the same things that we have had before? And in this country, it would be that we're going to see more and more focus on literacy, numeracy, and more testing and things for that, because people think that that's what's going to take us back to where we were. But what's your response to? I know that you didn't probably mean that, but how would you speak about that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I value literacy and numeracy, and when teachers talk about particularly arts or like unconventional styles of learning, I often feel like they think of it as like an afterthought, something for spare time, and I think that they could, while still pushing numeracy and literacy, include alternative ways of teaching, learning, integrating arts, and considering it actually integral, and especially with AI and the technology we have at the moment, like there's apps on your phone you can use to, get the answers in maths, or you could ask ChatGPT to write something, but fostering creativity through integrating arts or teaching differently and different styles of assessment, I think it will actually become critical. So maybe some forced change.
So last question here before we move to this solution part, or kind of a future thing. Sir Ken Robinson, who was a good dear friend of mine, used to say that schools are killing creativity. Do you agree with him?
At the round table yesterday, there was a question about what are some barriers to creativity, and what got me thinking about is that my creativity is restricted in school and within the assessments I receive, and I don't think it's something that's actually fostered with a lot of how school is set up and the assessment.
Yeah, I know. As I am a LSA at the school that I work at, there isn't even art classes there, and I think that this is like another one of those barriers that we have. It's so undervalued. Like, it's just, to them it seems like it doesn't really matter. Yeah.
Good. So here's a question for you all before we move to the second part. It's just you can rely on your previous neighbor. If you didn't get along with him or her too well, you can change. There's a lot of people here. But just for one minute, and we'll have a little chat here as well. So how would you propose we move forward from here? Like, this picture that I painted, and it's not just my picture, we know this very well, it's quite gloomy. And, the data is showing that we have been traveling wrong way for a long time. But, if you could give one advice to somebody who holds power to change things, what would you say? What would you kind of recommend that we need to do in this country to make sure that we have better schools, more equitable and fair education for each and every child here? Just 1 minute and have a little chat. Then I'll give you the right answer, right?
I think that obviously my point is passion-based learning. I think that in primary school, it's probably, I'm not sure which is the best way, but I don't think primary school students, they might not be able to go off their own bat and ask these questions.
As you're getting older, that's when you're developing those interests. Maybe like exposure to a whole bunch of different things in primary school.
Yeah, definitely. But I think you're right. I think having the exposure to a bunch of different things, allowing the student to actually find what their purpose is, or I say purpose, but you could say other things.
And like depending on the student's home life or what they're interested in outside of school or their parents, the exposure they get to certain things in school is probably some of the only times they might get that. Like an example would be like when they go on excursions to the gallery, it might be the only time that child visits the gallery. So that question or that visit is a lot.
I also think that the student being allowed to work at their own pace too. So in the Big Picture program, we are able to work at our own pace, and we didn't get left behind.
Stay here, I'll be back in a moment.
It's not that bad, isn't it? Being up here. It's pretty chill. I think it's alright. I don't mind. It's like a bit of an adrenaline rush. It's kind of fun. I don't. Yeah, I am lucky. I just gotta listen.
Thank you. Thanks so much. So before we move to the second part, that we'll look at the future. What can we do? What we need to do in this situation in this country? I think that this factor is loosely linked to what some people say that Albert Einstein has said, that we cannot solve the problems that we have using the same logic or same way of thinking that created them. And here in education, I think this is very much true here, especially in this country, that we know exactly why we are here, why the situation is like this. You know, Australia is one of those countries where we have done more reviews and analysis and studies than any other country in the world. We don't need any more commissions or panels or anything like this. We know what the issue is, but we are not very good in implementing because we try to use the same type of logic. This little piece of art here, by the way, is my son Otto, who is sitting here, who's 11 years old. We went to see the art exhibition in Melbourne a few months ago, Indigenous artist, and he got back and spent a day painting this little piece and then gave it to me. And there was a question in the previous presentation, what's your proudest moment? And I would say that that's pretty close one of the proudest moments I had when this little man brought me this piece of art, just like that. So let's take a look at the new paradigm of schooling. And you know, if there's one or two things that I want you to take away from this hour here with us, it's this: that if we really want to create a new school, new type of education for this country, we need a new paradigm. We need to recognize that the old paradigm doesn't work, that we have tried that long enough. We have wasted a lot of time and money on that, and it just simply is a wrong way to go. So we need to, as the definition of paradigm means that we need to change the whole mindset, how we think about these fundamental things of education. So for you guys who, I understand that most of you are within the arts or visual arts education space, this is the invitation for you to think about this as well, that you can keep on calling more time and resources and attention to what you do in a school, but I'm afraid that it's not enough unless we are able to point that there's something fundamentally not working in this big idea of education, and we need to change that. And more you are able to do that and offer arts and music and drama and those things as a part of the solution, the closer we are the situation where things actually will eventually get better. But I'm going to show you some of these things. So you remember this one in the 20 minutes ago when I showed you these very inconvenient trends that we have seen around the world and very much here in Australia as well. I can tell you one more thing here that makes this even more interesting and more compelling in these conversations. You know, this trend here is all about the data. So they have, you know, the interesting thing, when NAPLAN was introduced here in 2008, and when the OECD PISA came around in 2000, exactly for the same reasons, that if only we had more data and evidence, we would be able to improve education and make everything blossom. Now we have all this data and all this evidence, and I'm not saying anything about the number of academic research journal articles that have been published, follow exactly the same trend, and things are just getting worse. So if you want to rely on correlation, you could say that more data there is about what schools and teachers and kids are doing in the school, the worse they actually do. So we need to, I'm going to get back to this in a while, but we need to be able to, as educators, also able to identify these flaws and arguments that people are saying, and this is one of the biggest ones, that just give us a little bit more data and evidence and we'll fix this. It doesn't go this way. Because, one thing that happens with this type of logic or way of thinking is that it completely ignores this professional wisdom that you guys have in a school as educators, that you know much more than you think you do. But you know much less than you think you do in the kind of a middle of this storm of evidence-based arguments that we have. I have nothing against teaching and leading schools or doing things based on evidence, but enough is enough. So one thing that we all need to be aware, and it has been discussed and will be discussed in these conferences over and over again, is this changing way the place where learning happens. Okay? So this is not about arts, visual arts education or music, this is in general. So this is what we used to have. When I went to school was the only place where you can learn things. My parents told me that if you want to do anything in life, you have to go to school to learn foreign languages and mathematics and reading and all those things, okay? And then when I went to school in the 20th century, of course, what influences my learning, in the end of the day, what I learned, it was a school, of course, that was important, but then the family is one of the biggest drivers of what kids learn in the school. About 60% of the students' achievement still around the world is explained by the family background. And then the peers and the community and technology. When I went to school, technology meant radio and TV with the 2 stations, okay? So that was the past. And there are many people who still try to kind of pretend that this is how we're going to continue to the future. But what we see around the world in different countries now is that school is not anymore the place where you need to go if you want to learn some things, and you know this better than I do. That often young people, and I want to hear this from Otto and Elmi as well, say that I learned these things regardless I went to school. The school kind of slowed me doing these things that I wanted to do because I had to do these degrees and examinations and all these things. But look at this, it's a very different world where we are living now, that young people can learn most of these things that they need in life in order to do good things for themselves and others without not going to school. School can, of course, help and be supportive, but still the family, the community, the peers, but this growing role of technology is something that will force us to think very differently about what school could be in the future. So this new paradigm, there are different ways to do this, and this is just please see this as my way of thinking, and yours can be different, and so there's no right way to do this. But if you ask me that, so what would be the building blocks of this new paradigm of schooling that we have to start to think about right now, when this post-pandemic thing, when everybody was talking about building back differently and pouncing to the kind of a new reality. My fear is that actually nothing's going to happen. Things are going to get worse if we don't act. So collaboration is the key thing. That we need to take this more seriously. Collaboration in all levels of education and schooling, starting from the classroom, the school, community, the system, and systems of education. Like here in Australia, there's different systems, even within the same state. Here in ACT or Victoria, don't collaborate. There's no collaboration between Catholic school systems and government systems and independent school systems, let alone that there would be collaboration between the jurisdictions here. So we need to build this different culture of collaboration if we want to do this. The other one is that we need to learn to trust people more. And this comes, I'm going to get back to this, trusting these young people, what they can do, what they are capable of doing in schooling, much more than we do right now. But trusting teachers like yourselves in the school system, we need to learn to do that in this country. And I come from the country where the kind of a trademark of Finnish education is trusting our teachers to do the right thing in the school. And here we still don't take this to the heart. And then the third one, and again, there could be more building blocks here, but the third one is this idea of whole child, a whole student, holistic view of children. That they are not just a kind of objects where we try to transfer literacy and numeracy things in their minds. The students are holistic individuals, and they have different expectations and interests and views to the world and themselves that they need to do. So that's still something that our school systems here in Australia and most other countries don't reflect this, that we don't see children as holistic individuals, but very differently. So we need to focus on healthy relationships. In this country, I've been traveling. I saw last year about 130 schools around this beautiful country. In each and every territory, I went to APY lands and Eastern Arnhem Land, Kimberley, different places, and everybody's talking about the role of relationships. We need to have school system in the future that builds these relationships between these young people that you see over there, but probably more importantly, new types of relationships between these young people and us adults in the schools and communities. We need to focus on the active engagement that Otto, you were talking about, that how important is engaging yourself and young people in what they do in the school. We have to find a way to do that somehow. And there are few things that can better serve this than arts and music and drama. Not for everyone, but many young people. And then deeper and broader learning and well-being. So in this new paradigm, I see learning and well-being as combined, as a unit. Not anymore that we look at learning and well-being separately. Some people are often asking that, which comes first? The kids learn well and then they feel well, or that they feel well and then they learn? Silly question. I see this as one and the same thing. And if we do all of these things, I can promise you that in this country and many other places, we see much more equitable, kind of a trend towards much more equitable education. Arts is one of the most powerful ways to do that, by the way. There are a lot of studies and evidence that shows that when we have a rich arts, music, drama program in a school, it will benefit the equity parts as well. So this is just to show you how I think about this at this time that we are living now between the big pandemic. Remember the pandemic just 3 years ago? Everything will change. Nothing is going to be the same when we one day come out of this. And now look around, and everything's getting exactly the same. So now that's why we need to keep up this new narrative and not just bouncing back where we were, but build a very different way. So this industrial model that you saw earlier have all these different kind of labels there, the marketization and privatization, private good, age-based delivery. We have this kind of schools that organized in a funny way. We are preparing kids for the next level of education, the next examination, and then the adulthood. And the goodness is defined through the academic intelligence. So now we have this opportunity to think about the future, this kind of a near future that is about 15, maybe 10, 15, 20 years from now. And in my mind, I'm calling this a humanistic model of school. And it's a very different, that's why it's a paradigm thing, because it's not just a better industrial model of schooling, it's a very different way of looking at schooling. And here are some of those labels that I mentioned earlier. Education as a human right, as a common good. This is what the UNESCO is now these days calling every nation in the world, to see education more and more as a common good for everyone. Whole child, well-being and learning, and play and creativity being kind of an integral part of this paradigm. We don't have time to get into the kind of details. If you want to take a look at this slide deck, it is sleeping already on my website. You just go there and download it and use it in your own school or whatever you want to do. I just want to get back to this conversation. Sorry about this. Just to remind you, and this may be an unnecessary thing to do here, but we also need to challenge this kind of a current way of knowing. What does it mean to know or have knowledge in our school systems and universities as well? We live in a country that has the longest surviving living culture on the planet, 65,000 years. People have been knowing and teaching and learning things to survive and protect and teach others. And that's why it's so important that in the future we don't forget this one, but in the school education that we build on this, and not only in arts and music, but everywhere, in mathematics and science and all the ways of knowing. If we miss this one here in Australia, we're going to be lost and lose a lot of opportunities that many other countries don't have. So here's my conclusion, and this takes us to the rest of the conversation with Elmi and Otto. This, by the way, this is the artwork of my younger son. Where's Noah here? Noah is sitting over there. So I asked him when I was preparing for this presentation to all of his artworks, and he has many, to pick up one that he's proudest, and he said, it's this one. So I have just three things for all of us to think about, again, within this new paradigm of schooling. Not just doing the old things a little bit differently or change a little bit. We need to transform things. And the first one is to really rethink what students can do. I do believe, my faith and belief is that these young people have much more capabilities to do good things for themselves and others than we give them credit for. These young people are capable of doing many more things that we actually understand. If you take this seriously, then of course it has a world of meaning and make a big difference in how we do education in the school. So we have to design, redesign, co-design the schools so that all these capacities and capabilities that these young people have will become into use. Then secondly, we need to reimagine what the school could be. Now we are thinking about the school that is running from 9 to 3, 200 days a year, and everything is organized based on subjects and year groups and those things. We need to leave that behind. And the good thing here in Australia is that we have some of the most innovative and interesting schools I've seen anywhere around the world already. So we don't need to travel to England or the United States or Finland or other places to see what these new interesting schools are. They are already here. We just need to keep on asking what the school could be and how we can organize school in a place, in a ways that it will be helping young people like we have here to realize their talent and passion. And the third one is to reinvent the public education. Now, if you ask me, what do I think about public education here in Australia? My answer is this. We don't have a public education here. And then I would continue saying that we don't have a private education either. This is the only country in the world where the situation is this, that if you go to school, you pay anyway. Our kids go to public school, we have to pay for that. If they go to private school, the government will pay for that. Right? Show me another country that does silly things like this. There's none. So that's why we need to kind of reinvent this idea of public education. And I know that many of you, if you're a parent here, you kind of think this as a natural thing. This is how it's always been. But it doesn't have to be this way. We can have a school system where public means public. That if your child wants to have a music program in a school, you don't need to pay for that in a public school. Or if he wants to have materials in a visual arts classes, the parents don't need to pay for that. And now it's not like this. And that's what is driving this country's education towards more and more unequal situation. So that's why we need to pay attention to this public education thing. Now, over to you guys. I'm going to join you there, but what do you think? What do we need to do here in Australia to fix these things? And what do you think about this, my kind of a new paradigm?
I don't know. I think it's a really positive outlook to think that we don't have to stay the way we are or make the best of how it is now, and that there is actually this opportunity to do it differently, especially post-COVID, like you said. Nothing's happened. Yeah, and from talking with Otto as well about the pace of school, it's just being a very fast regurgitation of information. I just think we, in classrooms need to slow down. Yeah, I don't know.
Otto, what do you think?
Yeah, once again, I think for me anyway, it's all about being engaged with what you're doing. Why would you want to go to a place which you find is boring? How are we expected to learn from places that we think are boring? The best way to learn is through getting out and seeing what the real world is like through the community. And yeah.
There's one question here: is how do we amplify students' experience and voice for change in our education system? Do you want to comment on that?
I personally feel like I don't have much power as a student. I mean, now I am on a stage talking to teachers, so that's a bit of power. But in a classroom, I guess this is a bit unusual. I feel like the teachers are the only ones who are asked what kind of change they want to see happen. I know that there's been conversation with that about my school, and I don't know. I don't feel like there's this consultation, like you said, where they're viewing students as just the whole child. I feel like it is very just teachers and students, and a bit of a separation there.
Oh, the student voice and agency, does it happen these days?
I think that I think that all the talking kind of happens between the teachers. I don't really see much questions being asked to the students about what they think could change, which I think is really bad, to be honest, because the students are the ones that know the best.
You have both kind of a recent experience recently in the school. Do we have hope? Is this because I use the word time of hope here. Do you see that this is a moment when hope is there to really see the new type of school education here in Australia? Or?
I mean, honestly, I do. Talking with you another time before too, like it is very down to each individual making their own changes as well within a larger change. I could definitely seeing it move in a positive direction. Even like as I've gone through school, and now I'm in my last year, year 12, the changes that I've experienced through different schools I've gone through, and my sibling, who's only 2 years younger than me, has experienced different kinds of schooling to me. I think there's a lot of opportunities and a lot of people talking. I just think people need to get out of that mindset that we need to just work under our current system and make it the best we can. There is opportunity to actually just change the whole system, not just try and make the best out of something that is broken.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
I've firsthand seen, just in the program that I'm in, I've firsthand seen that there is improvements happening. I've seen the program grow way, way bigger than it was from the time that I first joined it, which I think is a really good thing.
So if I was the federal minister, Jason Clare, now sitting, he actually should be here. Maybe he's in town tomorrow, by the way. So what would you say to the minister who would hold not, the power to change everything, but in the nation's level of this narrative? And if the minister said, "Okay, I'm going to take what you say very seriously, but just one thing," what would it be?
I think for me, because what's gotten me really passionate about education currently is that Indigenous culture and languages class I do. I would say, like you said, there is a culture that's been here for over 60,000 years. That would be just one thing I would really want to see is those ways of knowing, doing, and being actually be a part of all schools. I'm very lucky that I get to do one class that's formatted that way. And I think from that, I'm really sad that I didn't have my early education in high school incorporate some of those ways.
Otto, what's your wish to the minister?
Try new things, like
Like what?
like more progressive programs such as Big Picture, such as Steiner School, things like that. Because this system obviously isn't working. As you said, we've seen all these tests and stuff show us these statistics, and nothing has actually happened.
What would you say to the minister? One thing. Equity. That's it. Done. Yeah. Say it again. Okay. Student voice. Yeah, it's actually interesting that the student voice is coming through in many of these places. But my concern, and I want to hear what you have to say, is that student voice is often seen as, okay, so let's ask these kids whether they like what we are planning to do. Then we're going to do it anyway. Because the agency is a very different thing, that whether we actually see these young people as a kind of a co-designers of this thing. But do you think that the student voice is enough, or should we have more, give young people and students a more kind of an active role in also designing and deciding what happens in a school?
Yeah, I heavily agree with that, and I think they're really there's like some positions like in school councils or leadership teams, but I feel like that only goes so far. And like you said, I feel like sometimes they're just listening but not actually hearing what we have to say. But I feel like there could be a lot of positive change when students are given opportunity to have a bit more power or say in what happens with their education.
I totally agree. I just think that it needs to be heard. Like, the student voice is there. We talk about this, but it's not being heard.
Right. Let's take a couple of those questions. We have a few minutes time before. Remember that I'm going to give you right answers to this quiz. Right? So, so there's a question that, are there ways for teachers to take steps, reimagine, be inspired and engage without having money and those issues included? I understand this question in a way that, so what can teachers do right now in this thing? I mean, one thing that, I don't know how you hear this whole, our conversation here, but I think the schools need to, here in Australia, need to have much more kind of a collective shared view about what is important in schooling. And this is what I'm always saying here when people are interested in my views. I say that we have probably the best education system in the world, but not for everyone. So we are doing great things in many parts of this country, in many schools, and many classrooms. But we have, at the same time, we have one of the most segregated school systems in the world, meaning that there are a lot of kids who are not included in this world-class schooling. So I think we need to, what you need to do in your own schools, or what you should do, is to create this idea of that we know what works, we know what to do, but we just need to do this, we need to do this collectively and together. We can do this here. In this country more than in many other countries. There's another question about how to inspire non-arts education colleagues to better value creative thinking skills within their own curriculum. I don't know how to do this other than having more conversations within your school about some of these future ideas, whole child, this holistic view of education that many people actually share. It's interesting, I've been talking about these similar things in teachers who are teaching mathematics and science and literacy, and they actually expect exactly the same things. So, but I think that the thing that you need to take away from here is that you know more than you think, and we have better education here than we think, but not for everyone. And that's something that we need to fix. Any of those questions, folks, that you want to?
I just wanted to add on to that last one. I was looking at Elliot Eisner with my mum because she was teaching that to her pre-service teachers. And he has great 10 lessons that art teach. And for a teacher that art isn't their specialty, or they're just a general teacher in another area, I think there's some really great points that I really like in that. One of them is that the arts engage problem solving and engage students' lateral thinking abilities, which we're talking about change and student voice. Promoting that kind of thinking is really important. And it allows students with other modes of expression and communication. And the final point was that whatever adults teach or promote in the classroom and out of the classroom, young adults will believe that's what adults think is important. So for a teacher who maybe is a general teacher or not in arts, I think those are some really good points.
The last one is for Otto. How can we heal the relationship between learning, education, and students? This country has failed with our system already. This is so easy that even Otto can answer this question. You don't need to if you don't feel like. Talk about big picture.
Yeah, so I think that giving the students a chance to think for themselves and take their learning into their own hands is a great way of doing this. If students can take learning into their own hands, they can do all types of things, and in doing so, they're practicing creativity and critical thinking and all these things that we aspire to have our students practice in school, but I believe on a higher level. I think that giving the students a chance to get out into the community and learn from people who know about their passions is also a really great way of learning. And I think that a great way of getting teachers to learn about this is by showing them what the students can do in these programs, yeah.
Excellent answer. Thank you so much, Elmi and Otto. And here is for all of you. The first question: quality and equity of school education around the world has improved during the 21st century. Right or wrong? Right or wrong? It is wrong. It has not improved, as you saw in these curves. Next one: Australia has more compulsory instruction time than any other OECD country. Yeah. And lastly, surprisingly, arts and music currently hold a similar status in our schools as literacy and numeracy. No, of course not. All right. Did you find this hour interesting? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone, and I particularly want to thank these amazing young people. Please join me in thanking them once again.
Pasi.
Thanks so much to Pasi, Elmi and Otto. You've certainly given us some fiery fuel for thought as we head into afternoon tea. On-site audience, please make your way to Gandel Hall for afternoon tea, and online we'll see you shortly for the next session. Look for it on your agenda. Thanks everyone. Thanks Pasi.